Hey YouTube, I'm aspiring writer Alex Ross. Welcome to today's review. Today's review is about Dan Simmons' The Abominable. Now I know a lot of people are fans of Dan Simmons. I know even Stephen King himself has praised the guy up and down. And this is the only book I've read by Dan Simmons. I know The Tear and Hyperion are highly recommended. I have them on my to read list, but I have not gotten to them yet. So this is the only book of his that I've read. And basically, The Abominable is about these mountain climbers that go searching for um, George Mallory and Andrew Irvine, who disappeared in real life in the early 1920s on Mount Everest. And the thing is, they tried to summit it, and there's been always been a big debate on whether or not they were actually the first people to reach the top of the mountain instead of those who did it 30 years after they disappeared. And their bodies were never found until, well, actually one of them was found in the 90s. I can't recall which one. I know one of them is still missing, but explorers had found one of their bodies, almost 60 years later. And this book is it's based off of a semi true story. I mean, there's Dan Simmons kind of uh, took the accounts of this guy that went on a search party in the 1920s or 30s to go looking for Andrew Irvine and George Mallory, and obviously they were unsuccessful. So it's a fictional story that Dan Simmons had taken into his own, but there is some fact to it, and he kind of there's a great intro to the book. And if I could recommend one thing about the book, it's the intro. The intro is fantastic. The way the author talks about the meeting meeting the guy the book is based off of. It's just fantastic to hear how he talks about the experience. And I hate to say it, I didn't like this book. I really wanted to, because it had me engaged within the first couple hundred pages. Like, I read the first 100 pages in one sitting, and I was just like, man, this is awesome. I love the detail in the climbing and how it gets done and how they prepare for it. And it's like, after I read those first 100 pages, I immediately watched 4 or 5 different documentaries about Mallory and Irvine, and that really got me more into the experience of the book. Well, I continue reading it, and it's like they're practicing on getting prepared to go climb Mount Everest. Like, okay, I can understand that. And there's some character development. There's between the three characters, and like they're likable enough. There's some interesting conversations about their past, and then they get to the mountain itself, and it's just all downhill from there. No pun intended. Uh, I just I don't know. It just felt like the same thing over and over again. It's just like there was no difference between Simmons trying to describe their climbing practices than trying to climb the actual mountain. It's like it felt like it just felt repetitive, and it's like, well, okay, here's another description of them getting frostbite or whatever. And it's like, I realize that happens a lot, but I felt like there could have been more, or actually not more to it. There could have been less. Like, he spent, I mean, I don't want to criticize a published author, but he spent way too much time, in my opinion, on the details, and it just kind of just dragged on a little bit. And then my breaking point really was there's a big twist around like page 5 or 600, and at first I was okay with it, but then the more ridiculous it got, like, it jumped the shark big time. I won't spoil it, but the Abominable just wasn't for me. And the reason that I picked it up, because I had been always interested in Sasquatch and the Abominable Snowman, the Yeti. I always found that mythology to be interesting. Not that I necessarily believed in it. I was always kind of 50-50, and that's kind of what drew me to the book was the title. And really, the book isn't about Yeti or Sasquatch or the Abominable Snowman. In fact, the title actually refers to the mountain itself being abominable and unconquerable and unrelenting. Um, and I mean, the Yeti, without giving too much away, the Yeti kind of makes a few cameos here and there, whether it's through mentions or actual appearances. I won't say, but there's a slight presence in the book. But if that's your reasoning for picking up the books, don't. It's definitely a mountain climbing adventure book. I mean, if you're into that, great. Um, it I mean, it was worth reading just because I got to learn more about Mallory and Irvine, but I learned that through the documentaries and not necessarily the book itself. I mean, I felt like the book it's about, let's see, it's almost 800 pages long, and I felt like it could have been half of that, and then it would have been awesome. Um, I mean, don't get me wrong, I like long books. I've read a couple of the Harry Potter books, but I think you have to have a certain balance, and you have to have I don't know, you just gotta have variety in your subject matter. It just felt like the same thing over and over again. It's like when you go to Mount Everest, it should be different and not sound the same as when they were doing their practice climbs. And it just felt like the same thing over and over again. It's like, um, I mean, I don't know what else to say. I didn't like this book. I mean, I think Dan Simmons is a good author. My impression of him is still pretty sound. I'm excited to read Hyperion and the Terror and some of the other things he's written. Uh, just just because I didn't care for this book doesn't mean that he's not a great author. Um, so yeah, I mean Dan Simmons, The Abominable. It's not worth the read. I don't think. I mean, you can read the first 300 pages and get the best out of it. That's the best I can recommend. Read the intro, just the intro, or the first 300 pages, because that really is the best part. It just, like I said, slides downhill the rest of the way. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, follow me on Twitter, comment below if you want me to talk about a certain book, author, movie, whatever. Talk about writing. Just let me know. Have a nice afternoon.